everyone, it's Leanne here. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made a quick and easy fairy card using the Fairy Friends stamp set from Lawn Fawn. Now I have another video that shows the coloring of the fairy elements, and I'll link that in the description below and in the video here. But I'm just making this as a quick card because I'm using items that I've already colored in my stash. So to begin, I've cut an A2 size cardstock and covered that in the perfectly plaid paper from Lawn Fawn. I've cut a teal background an inch shorter in height and width from the A2 cardstock, and that's going to be my base. And then I used the metal border die from Lawn Fawn to cut out the grass area, and this is in a slightly darker teal paper cardstock. Now these papers of the two teal colors I got at Michael's, and they're just loose leaf papers that you can buy. Now I'm going to use my sentiment from the Fairy Friends stamp set as well, and I want to make sure that when I stamp that on the ground that I have enough clearance for that to sit nicely in the area when I put the ground paper down on the lighter colored teal background. So I'm just making sure that the height is okay to cover enough to have the sentiment there. So I'm marking off where I think that clearance needs to be. I really want the ground to be lower on the background because I want to leave a lot of room at the top to put the fairies and the flowers and my elements. So I'm just double checking everything here, and I've marked graphite on the edges of the page as well, so that when I turn the paper over, I can see on both sides where that end is. So here I'm just marking the edges as I mentioned. And I'm just making sure that I know where that line is. So I'm going to take my ruler and draw a line so that I don't put tape outside of the area that I need to adhere to the card. So I'm just using my tape roller here and just taping down what I need to stick to the base of my card. And I'm not taping the grass blades because I want to tuck elements underneath them so they feel like they're coming up from behind the background. So I didn't put any tape on that area. So I've added this to the background, and I'm taking my X-Acto knife and cutting mat and my metal ruler and just trimming out the edges so that it's nice and flush to the background. So when you flip that over here, you can see that everything is lining up, and that's attached now. And just double checking again that my sentiment fits, and it does. So I have the space I need to add that sentiment to the bottom. I'm going to stamp this in Memento Tuxedo Black ink, but before I do, I'm doing a test piece. Because this cardstock has a textured background to it, it has a ripple, I want to make sure that the ink is going to be okay and everything's going to sit really nicely on the paper and I don't have any white spots. And everything turned out pretty good, so I went ahead and stamped that on my background. And here I'm just adding the exclamation point. Sometimes I put this together with the sentiment and stamp them at the same time, but I find that I can't get it as close to the sentiment line as I like, so it was easier to stamp it separately. Now here I'm taking a micron pen in 0.005 and I'm just touching up any crevices where the ink didn't hit the paper enough. There wasn't a lot, it was just a light touch-up. And so now that I have that done, I'm going to put down all my elements and see how I want them to lay on the cardstock and sort of work out the composition of my scene. I'm tucking everything in behind the grass blades so it feels like the fairy elements are tiny and the grass is really big and they're coming up from behind the grass. So it just kind of gives a little more illusion of the depth of the fairies being the smaller elements. Once I have everything in place and I'm happy with the composition, I'm going to begin gluing the elements down. I'm using my tape roller to put most of my elements in place. And I also use my X-Acto knife. I use the tip of the X-Acto knife to hold onto the tape on the background and just to pivot my items as I decide exactly where the placement should be when I glue them down. I find that this is really helpful because when you're holding tiny elements with your hands, it's harder to see where things are and to get them exactly straight. So I find that if I am able to just use the X-Acto knife, I can pivot them until I'm happy where the placement is and then just push them into place. Now because my background is a little bit smaller than the base of my card, I have a little bit of clearance around the edges, so I'm having my items hang over the edge just to break the frame a little bit and create more interest visually. Now for my fairy, she's the center point of my scene, so I'm putting her on some foam tape, and as her wand I will put on foam tape as well. Now when I was placing her, I was trying to figure out where exactly I wanted her to fall on the background, and I wanted to have her breaking the frame as well at the top. And so I just brought back my base to see how far I could put her up over the edge without having her exceed the main background, as I just want to make sure that she fits in the envelope okay. So once I had that in place, I worked on the wand. Now a little trick here is I cut off the end of the wand because it has a white border around the die cut. So I want it to really look like she is holding the wand. So I cut off the bottom and just rest it on her hand. So this way the black lines between the edges of the wand and the black outline of her hand intersect, and it feels more integrated into the pictures, so they don't feel like two separate elements. Because this piece is so tiny, I have decided to use white glue to put this on. I didn't actually put this on foam tape. I just taped it to her. So I put some white glue on the back, and then I just put that exactly into place. And then I came in with my micron pen and just touched up the edge of the black line so that anywhere that it didn't intersect, where there might be a little bit of white paper showing, I just connected those two. So this is the base of my scene. It's almost done. I decided to attach it to the base of my card with some foam tape just to give it a little bit more elevation. I didn't put a lot of foam tape on the elements in the scene, only my fairy, so I thought that the second layer here would be appropriate. And it wouldn't be too high to fit into the envelope. So I made sure to cover that well, and I'm using 3M foam tape. I find that this foam tape is a little bit more expensive than, say, a dollar store foam tape, but it really works really well. It doesn't gum up and stick all over everything. It's nice to cut, it doesn't stick to your scissors, and it's easy to peel the backing off. So I sort of eyeball that where it should go and put it into place. And now I'm going to add some sequins. I am using pink because I only used pink in the fairy dress. Now she is my focal point, so I wanted her to have a spot color. But in design, even though you have a spot color, you want to disperse it around the composition a little bit so that it doesn't become a strong focal point and it's the only thing you see. So I'm adding these pink sequins as a supportive visual element. And I'm also going to use the placement of these sequins to create the eye direction, the movement that I want people to visually look at the scene. So with the placement here, the eye movement will begin in the top right corner of the card. You're going to see the fairy first, and then those sequins are going to lead you down to the bottom left corner, and that's where you will read from bottom left to bottom right, reading the sentiment. So it starts visually in the top right corner to the bottom left corner and then across the bottom, and that's where you open the card. So for the sequins to help continue the eye direction movement, I'm going to use green to match sort of the grass look and feel. And I'm just deciding on the placement of those. And as well, when you're adding elements like this, it's good to use odd numbers. Odd numbers creates visual interest, and it's an odd balance. So if you used, say, 2 sequins on the left and 2 sequins on the right, you have a competing weight, a visual weight, because they're both even numbers. So it's good to use odd numbers. We learn all these little tricks in design school, so it comes in handy even when you're creating something like this. As a finishing touch, I used a Wink of Stella brush pen, and I just sort of thought if the fairy was flying through the scene, how would she move? And that's where I placed my brush, so you can see there. And there you have it. This is my quick and easy fairy card. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe so you're notified the next time I post a video. As an added little bonus, when I put this into the envelope, I noticed the fairy was peeking at the top. That was totally unplanned, but I thought it was so cute. So I wanted to show you guys that. Thank you so much for watching.